Introducing Tundra Football League.
FTFLers, it is I, the owner of the first place in the North, Hulkamaniacs, the real king of the FTFL and that song in your heart, and lest us not forget, the host of the longest running weekly episodic fantasy football update show. That's right, welcome to the FTFL Weekly Update. It is I, Brett. My goodness gracious, 9 weeks down. We are staring week 10 straight in the face. 4 weeks left. Now, nobody has been eliminated yet. And let I add, nobody has completely given up. There have been some teams that have sold off bits and pieces. However, they continue to go back to the waiver wire. They go back to the scrap heap to field a competitive team. Now, different than what we saw at the end of last season, and we're going to update to how has that affected the accounting. Something came about this week in a conversation with somebody. More on that later in our accounting update segment. Tomorrow night, 7:20 is the trade deadline. We have seen a lot of trades, including what I consider to be the dumbest trade in FTFL history this year. 7:20 tomorrow night. If you got any left, get them in before then. Now, this past week in week 9, we had one game decided by a half point. That's right. The Mixing Cocktails finally got back on the left side of the ledger at the expense of the Ryan Diesel Fantasy Football game, a half point. And I thought, geez, when was the last time we saw a half-point victory? Well, it was week 5, the Pack Attack versus the Architects, really not all that long ago. Now, not all that long ago, although it was the beginning of the season, it seems like a long time ago, was the last time we saw Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas on the field. Welcome back. They helped Andy again turn the tides this week. However, we are very quickly saying goodbye once again to Christian McCaffrey, dinged up his shoulder, getting a second opinion. That's usually not a good sign. Also back is Sid to the bottom of the South Division, where he has spent the most out of any team this year. He happens to be the only team in the South that is below 500 at the moment. The I'm back baby. Now, if the trend holds up, Eric, you're going to get beat this week by Sid, and of course that would be 3 of the last 4, and your hold on first base will continue. Already disappeared this week, we'll get to that, but you are really clunking it down the stretch. Also, Eric, part of that might still be due to the fact that you took Clyde Edwards-Helaire first overall. Of course, we've spent this season analyzing that pick in comparison to taking Aaron Jones, in comparison to maybe picking up James Robinson, and maybe, just maybe, there was someone else you should have considered with that first overall pick. We'll update the chart tonight. Let's get to the games. First game, and I mentioned it, the Pack Attack coming in at 5-3, taking on the Architect at 5-3. That's right. First place on the line. Now, Eric, over the last 3 weeks, has failed to go above 80.5. In this league, that's gonna get you. And he got by Matt this week, 91.5 to Eric's 80. Matt takes over sole possession of first place because, of course, Ryan Deesum, also at 5-3, lost to the Mixin' Cocktails. If you are Matt, Devontae Adams is on an absolute tear. 25 points this week, 500 yards, 7 touchdowns over the 5 games he has been in. Good Lord. Will Fuller, the 5th, not the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, but the 5th. 18.5 points. Derek Carr, 18 points. Antonio, newly acquired Gibson, 9.5 points. Adam Thielen, only 3 points. Very disappointing game for him. However, didn't matter. Also didn't matter for Eric that Russell Stupid Face Wilson put 28 points on the board. He accounted for 4 turnovers. Now, I know Markser is screaming at the screen right now going, I've been telling you, negative points for turnovers, but nobody will listen. Yeah, we did, and we voted not once, not twice, but 3 times. And, of course, that's the rule here in the very Loctite constitution that we have in the FTFL. After that, 15 for Juju. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, another ho-hum performance at 9.5 points. Jonnu Smith with 9. Melvin Gordon, who just seems to be falling off the fantasy table, only a half point. Antonio Brown in his first game in almost 2 years, maybe just a little over a year, 3.5 points. Good luck with him, Eric. Good luck. I know you're trying to turn this around. You've lost 2 out of your last 3. You're clinging now to what is a heap of teams in second place in the South. Matt moves on to first place. Another team now that'll be joining Eric at that 5-4 second place in the South is the Radioactive Monkeys, who took on the King. 2 teams, 4-4 in the South. 106 for the Monkeys, 100 for the King. If you're Adam Saltmarsh, you're just trying to steer this ship as best as you can. Of course, you've had some good weeks. You've had some down weeks. This is another good week. Kyler Stupidface Jr. Murray with 38. Allen, 16.5. James Robinson in his hot tub along with Harrison Butker put up 12. Mark Andrews, a highly touted tight end coming into this season, only 1.5 points. Michael Gallup on the bench, 3.5 points. And of course, now, that trade, the Kirk for Gallup trade, is going down as one of the worst trades in the history. Or was it? Or was it? Because, of course, Andy beat Ryan Deesum this week by a half point. Did Christian Kirk factor into that victory? Was this the long game all along? Was Salty trying to help Andy's team in Week 7? Does he know something? Week 7, Week 9, does he know something about the future? Come on, that's preposterous. That's unheard of. In the end, didn't matter that Gallup's 3.5 points were on the bench because Saltmarsh won anyways. If you're the King, you wasted yet another Dalvin. Well, I suppose you didn't waste it last week, but you definitely wasted the Dalvin Cook performance this week. 33 points. Newly acquired Terry McLaurin, 19.5. A.J. Brown, 18. Matt Stafford, 10. Justin Jackson, San Diego Chargers running back. And by the way, not the San Diego Chargers, the LA Chargers. 0 points, gets hurt right away in what continues to be a string of calls for the wambulance on Hagen's part. Every week, someone gets hurt early. Every week, we listen to Sid piss and moan. Just win the games, and then we wouldn't have to worry about this. Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill, 26 and 18 on the bench, respectively. I am not a math teacher in Browerville, but I believe either of those starting over Matthew Stafford wins the game. And let's point out, you started Stafford because truly you have zero faith in your Minnesota Vikings. And let's be clear, that's probably how it should be. But odd that you picked the Vikings to fail you, yet they failed you. Wait, what? That's right. Anyways, speaking of failing, on to the next game. Mana, 3-time Lucky Pants, looking for a 4th-time champ. Mana coming in at 5-3, taking on the team who we had recently acquired Derrick Henry from. John seemingly had sold off parts, looking to next year. But something funny happened along the way. John wins last week. He's back to 500. And this week, John wins again. 94 points for Team Linkowitz. 69 points for Mana. No Henry, no problem. 69 is definitely Jeff's lowest point total of the season. If you're John, Big Ben leads the way, 24 points. Now, if you saw, Big Ben did go on the COVID list. I'm sure John was thrilled to death. Yet another player who is not going to be available for him. Really, the list is growing by the day. Tyreek Hill, 24.5. Baltimore's defense, 14. Marvin Jones, 9.5. If you're Markser, Justin Herbert, 18 points. Big week last week, this week, not so much. Josh Jacobs, Stephon Diggs, both 10.5. Will Lutz, 9. David Johnson gets a concussion, tally 0 points. DeAndre Hopkins, 3.5, lowest point total of the year. Josh Allen, 32 points on the bench. Wouldn't have mattered, but Jeff has really struggled to figure out which quarterback to play this year. If only he had some way of knowing. But again, there isn't really any way of knowing. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, on to what was going to be Who Dis. Of course, we take time to learn about a player that maybe a lot of us know about. And we were going to spend time talking about DJ Dallas, Ryan Deesum's pickup from last week, Seattle's running back when everyone else was hurt. He didn't have a bad week. Ryan Deesum still lost. Jettison DJ to the scrap heap, so it's more as if, who dat? And we'll just go ahead and forget that he existed all together. Instead, a separate Ryan Deesum incident. Having a conversation with him this week, he was bemoaning our roster size. Now, I remember he was at that fateful draft at the townhome 1271 Timber Shoulder Lane the morning after. I was up all night partying at the Motley Crue concert. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, head was just pounding, went to go get donuts for all of you sorry, sad sacks. And we had that draft at 7 a.m. at the townhome. And what happened at that draft, Ryan Deesum? Oh, I'll remind you. You fools added not one, but 2 roster spots at that very draft, in part because somebody forgot to draft a kicker, Sid Hagan. So that's right, 2 roster spots. So Ryan, oh, we got too many roster spots. Oh, there's no one for me to pick up. Oh, my team is terrible. And by the way, you would have gotten beat by me the week before I played you. You would have gotten beat by me the week after I played you. But somehow, some way, you found the horseshoe, reached deep down inside, pulled it out, and had the week you did last week. But no matter. And you went on to be like, oh, the rosters, oh, there's no one to pick up, oh, this will just destroy the pool of money that Brett's going to win at the end of the season. So I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and see. How does this year's spending compare to the past 5 years? And I know I've talked lately about how we didn't have quite enough help with research, and we could use some help in the numbers department. Well, guess what? We finally got a guy. He doesn't need an introduction. I give to you the FTFL Financial Update. Everybody, that's right, your old friend Bart. I'm sorry about I was out hunting this weekend and I turned around to put the harness strap on. I took a stick to the eye. The doctor says it's going to be okay. It's going to take a little while to heal. So my good friend Brett, boy, bless his heart, I was a little bit down on my luck looking for some work, and I saw that the FTFL weekly update needed someone to do numbers, and I thought, well, shoot, who better to do numbers than old Bart? Yeah, that's right, man. I have really got this figured out, and I thought, he said, well, Bart, here's what we need. I want you to figure out how much money we spent here in the old FTFL, not just this year, but the last 5 years or so. I'm just super curious. So I kind of broke it down, and I thought, well, it's really interesting what we look now. This year, of course, there's been a lot of trades, and we are currently sitting at $205. Damn. Y'all got just money to throw around up here. Jeez Louise, $205 do a lot with $205. All right, well, in 2019, it was only $172 only. Jeez, listen, that's what you wrote on that. So I tell you what, 18 was $190, 17 was $174. You got to go all the way back, though, to 2016, where we spent $243 in transactions. Now, in those 5 years, there's a bit of a trend as far as who spent the most amount of money. It looks like in 16, it was Kramerica Industries spending $50 in one season. That, of course, was Sid. In 17, it was You Need a Bigger Boat. They spent $48. Of course, that was also Sid. In 18, it's only $28. Boy, someone got real cheap that year. That was Pump. But wait, Sid spent $27. He was second place that year. Back in 19, it was $31. And that again was Sid. If you've been following along, I bet you can kind of figure out who's going to be number one in 2020. But I'll break it down from the least amount to the most amount spent. Linkowitz has spent $8. Pack Attack is $12. Mana is $14. Adam Saltmarsh is $15. Matt, the Architect, spent $17. The Hulkamaniac, that's Brett's team. I heard they're doing pretty well this year. That's $18. Ryan Deesum, Fantasy Football Team, $21. Now, that's the bottom 7. The top 3, oddly enough, are teams that they're not even above 500. They're just throwing money like a snowball into a fire as far as I can see it, man. I'll tell you what. Yeah, the Mixing Cocktails have spent $29 for a 2-7 record. But I could have turned $29 into like a couple hours of hard labor moving boulders or something for that. You got 2 wins. That's really pathetic. Plan B. Wait, Plan B, isn't that something? I've heard of that, but why would someone name their team after some sort of contraceptive? I I don't get that. Maybe that's a kind of a fantasy football thing. I don't know. Now, they also spent $29 for a 2-7. I guess the ticket is, if you want a 2-7 record, you go spend $29. Now, the only name we haven't mentioned, of course, is the person who really has been all over this board, Sid Hagen, the king of the FTFL, $42 for a 4-5 record. So you spend a little bit more, you get a couple more victories. But all three of those teams, they ain't doing much, but they are still fighting, and I guess that's really the name of the game. You know what? I'm excited for my future role in the FTFL Weekly Update, and that's really it for the finances for now. So we'll see you next time. Goodbye! So nice to see my friend Bart again. I'm glad that he's okay. I'm not entirely sure where he is. Last I heard, he was still on the run. I don't know if that matter ever got attended to. No difference. He is still a new employee. That's right. We now have 2 employees here at the FTFL studios. And next up happens to be the original employees game. 5-3 Hulkamaniacs, the dominant Hulkamaniacs who have been just cutting a path of destruction across this league since week 1. Taking on the visitors from Planet B with questionable motives. And I'm starting to question why I have to play him twice a year. I mean, thankfully I get to play Swart twice a year, especially this year, because he is now the second person I have swept. Jeff Markser was the first. Andy could be the third next week in what, again, has been a season for the books. 107.5 for me, 74.5 for the DSOM award-winning visitors from Planet B with questionable motives. With my score, I am on pace to become the 5th highest scoring team of all time. 3 of the top 5 teams went on that year to win the Fantasy Bowl. If we go back to when I won the Fantasy Bowl in 2003, fun little fact here, and of course we score way more points now than we did then. That year that I won the title, in 16 games, I scored 1,035 points. Through 9 games, I'm already at 969. And of course, a lot of this has to do with the most washed up quarterback in all of the NFL, Aaron Rodgers, who again had just a pedestrian 38 points. DK Metcalf, who is again the most uncoverable man in the NFL, 15.5. Jason Sanders, 14. Alvin Kamara and TJ Hawkins at 10.5 apiece. James Conner, 1 point. Pittsburgh Steelers, did you forget James Conner was on the sideline? You had zero interest in running the football in that game. It was absolutely ridiculous. Tyler Lockett, another pedestrian, 4 points. Brandon Cooks on the bench, 15.5, didn't really matter. Drew Brees tried his damnedest to match Aaron Rodgers, put up 28. Young Hui Koo got 13. Aaron Jones. Julio Jones outduels Deontay this week, 10.5. Emmanuel Sanders, 10 points. Le'Veon, the 6th-round pick, traded away for Bell, half point. Wonderful. Corey Davis, 0 points. Swart now slides into a tie for last place because, of course, Andy did win this week, so they are both now 2-7, and we've been talking about the game throughout the entire episode. The Ryan Deason fantasy football team coming in at 5-3, taking on the hapless Mixing Cocktails, who are trying to avoid their, the worst season after a championship in league history, let alone just the worst season in history. I think 2-11, 2-10-1, something like that. Markser maybe ran off a season like that. Terrible, terrible season. Andy is one step closer to at least getting out of that record. Still, though, in play is the 4-9 that we at Adam Swart rolled out all the way back in, I believe, 2008. If the Ryan Deason, well, actually, let's start with Andy's team, of course, Mixing Cocktails. Christian McCaffrey comes back, blows it smooth out the box, 27 points, and then promptly exits stage left. Christian Kirk. That's right, I told you we'd get to this. Christian Kirk, 20.5 points. Did Salty trade Andy Christian Kirk so he could beat Ryan Deason here in Week 9, thus keeping Salty in the hunt? I doubt it. Lamar, 10 points. What a just letdown of a season. Anyone who drafted, kept, whatever, Lamar Jackson has not received any sort of dividends on that. Michael Thomas in his first game back in forever, 4.5 points. This is Andy's first win in a month. First win in a month. If you're Ryan Deason fantasy football team, the same old, same old. Patrick Mahomes, 30 points. Travis Kelce, 15 points. Those two individuals are accounting for 25% of all the points on his team. 25%. Every week, number 1 and number 2, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. The problem has been finding someone to help out and add to that. Of course, DJ Dallas, 9 points in a brief cup of coffee with the Ryan Deason Fans football team. And Aaron Jones in a somewhat, stinker of a week, only 6.5 points. Of course, the real trouble for Deason is putting any sort of trust in the San Francisco wet paper sacks. Who do I play at running back? Raheem Mostert's not around. Is it Jerick McKinnon? Is it Justin Juszczyk? Is it JaMychal Hasty? He seemed to be the hot commodity this week. A lot of people picked him up. A lot of people played him. And a lot of people caught it smooth on the chin. 1 point for JaMychal Hasty. While Jerick McKinnon, on the other hand, 11.5 points. The final 4 seconds of the game. Punched in a touchdown. Had Ryan just left him in, he would have won. He would have won. Now, of course, Aaron Jones is the last piece of the puzzle so far as we update Clyde, Aaron Jones, and James Robinson. All of their numbers went up this past week. However, we know Eric should have kept Aaron Jones. We know Eric should have drafted James Robinson. But were you aware that he could have passed on Aaron Jones? He could have passed on James Robinson, and he still could have selected someone who was averaging more points a week than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, this man is recently injured. He's going to miss a few games, but I do find it interesting that yet another scrap heap running back could have had a case made for the first overall pick. Now, don't let the 63 points fool you. Myles Gaskin is averaging more points a week than Clyde. Eric, you have made a poor choice, and Myles Gaskin joins the list now. James Robinson still in the lead with 105.5. Aaron Jones, 91.5. Clyde with a mere 80. And Myles Gaskin at 63. Going to miss a couple weeks, but will he finish with a higher average? Would it have made more sense for Eric to draft Myles Gaskin? I don't know. We'll have to wait to the end of the season and see how that shakes out. All right, let's do the stud, the dud, and the decent, and then wrap it up with games for next week. Stud of the week, 2 of them, Rodgers and Kyler Stupid Face Jr. Murray, both had 38 in wins. Dalvin Cook, 33, but you lost. Your team lost, so we can't call you the stud. I'm sorry, that's the rules. The dud of the week, the San Francisco wet paper sacks. Any sort of hope you put in that team, especially offensively, just pathetic. They're all hurt. And in particular, James Hasty with just 1 point. DeAndre Hopkins, also 3.5 points, lowest point total, gets a dud nomination as well. This week's reason why Adam Schwartz should win the decent, he traded for Le'Veon Bell. He gave up a 6th-round pick. He got a half point this week and really hasn't gotten much of anything from him, and I don't see anything coming. Sid started Matthew Stafford. He could have won this week. Does that come back to haunt? It might. It might come back to haunt when all of a sudden 4 of the South teams, I think we're going to see only 2 out of the North, which means 4 out of the South might be coming in. Right now, Sid, you are the odd man out when it comes to that. And then lastly, Deason for starting Hasty over McKinnon, for out-thinking yourself, out-coaching yourself. But I do appreciate the money being added to the pot that I will win, of course, at the end of this year. Now, 4 weeks to go, 3 weeks to the playoffs, 7 weeks in total. One thing to think about. We talked about if the NFL shuts down, we're just going to call it. What we didn't talk about is what happens if the NFL shortens their season because of COVID. That's something that is definitely on the horizon as a maybe. We'll have to kind of play things by ear as we head into Week 10. The first place architect is 6-3, taking on the second place Team Linkowitz at 5-4. The Ryan Deason Fans football team also at 5-4, taking on the Monkeys at 5-4. A battle to keep pace with the architect. A battle to keep away from Sid Hagen, who probably will win this week because it is the every other that's coming. And if you are the Pack Attack, this is when you have to right the ship. You've got lots of injuries. You haven't been able to figure this out today. This week has got to be your week. You are 5-4, taking on the King, who is 4-5. The Hulkamaniacs is 6-3, taking on the Mixing Cocktails, the second Brother Bowl of the season. Can I get my third sweep of a team in the North? Time will tell, of course, later. And lastly, Plan B at 2-7, taking on Mana, 3-time Lucky Pants, looking for a 4th champ. Mana at 5-4. Let this sink in. Matt pointed it out. It's been in my notes. We're heading into Week 10. And I'm in first place. And Matt's in first place. Who would have seen that coming? I can't say the answer is no one. I hope you enjoyed the show. I want you to join me next week. Until then, peace! Hey, what's up? How's it going? Yeah, I know, right? I mean, who would have thought? I mean, to see the two of us atop, I know. I mean, just unbelievable season. But I mean, come on. I mean, we kind of knew this was going to happen. That being said, do you still have that copy that we made for you? Good, because I lost mine. What do you mean that's too bad? No, we were in this together, man. We were going to do this together all the way up until the final game of the season. Come on, man. I don't know where it is. I've looked everywhere. Yes, I've asked my kids. Come on, please, come on. Thank you. Gosh, yeah, we'll meet up tomorrow and I'll get it from you. Thanks, man.